So Anthony Joshua has got the height and reach on Daniel Dubois. As you can see here on BoxRec, AJ is listed at 6'6", and Dubois is listed at 6'5", although whenever I've seen them face to face, the height difference looks a lot bigger than 1 inch to me. Nevertheless, AJ's reach is listed at 82 inches, and Dubois is listed at 78 inches. Now, normally, the taller fighter with the longer reach tends to get the better of things at long range behind his jab. Not always, and I want to emphasize that, not always, but normally. The question is, will that be the case here in this fight? Because several people who have sparred Daniel Dubois, fought him, and even taken him on the pads have said that he has the most powerful jab they've ever felt. And many people seem to believe that this will be the key to Dubois beating Anthony Joshua. They point out, for example, that AJ had a lot of problems with Robert Helenius's jab. It left him with a bloody nose. And so the idea is, if Helenius's jab is doing that to AJ, Dubois' jab is going to completely destroy him. Also bear in mind that Helenius, despite being slightly taller than Anthony Joshua, actually had a shorter reach. You can see here, Helenius's reach is listed at 79 inches, although, and I've pointed this out many times in my videos over the years, reach is not the same as arm length. You can actually have a longer reach than someone, but shorter arms. And just to show you here briefly, this is the reach measurement. It's your wingspan from fingertip to fingertip like this. That's how it's measured. Whereas arm length is measured only from the armpit to the end of the fist. Not with outstretched fingers like with the reach measurement, no, the end of the fist. And so I've always figured that arm length is a far more relevant measurement than reach. But for some reason, most television networks and boxing organizations don't want to adopt it. The only one I've ever seen who did, that I can remember at least, was HBO. They used to use the arm length measurement as opposed to reach measurement, at least for a number of years. I'm not saying they always did, but for a number of years they were using arm length rather than reach. Because, for example, if you've got really big hands and let's say a really wide chest, you could also have relatively short arms, in which case you might go in there against somebody having the longer reach, but actually his arms are longer than yours. So I just wanted to point that out. Anyway, I want to give you a couple of examples here of a taller fighter who had a really good jab having problems with a shorter guy's jab. So Lennox Lewis, when he fought Frank Bruno, Lewis 6'5", 84-inch reach, Frank Bruno 6'3", 82-inch reach. Who knows what the arm length is, but Lewis was the faster, more athletic guy. Big speed advantage for Lewis. Far more fluid as well, and also the younger guy. But Bruno gave him all sorts of problems with his jab. Don't get it twisted, Lewis still had a fair amount of success with his own, but Bruno's jab was connecting with regularity. In fact, for those of you who haven't seen this fight, it was actually a jab fest pretty much, up until the 7th round where it ended. And that's not to say it was a boring fight or a bad fight, no, because both guys were throwing really heavy jabs, knocking each other's heads back at times. Now, having an advantage in arm length definitely helps when it comes to landing your jab, but even more important than that is correct technique and also timing. If your jab is well timed, you can often overcome a reach disadvantage, especially if you've got the speed to compensate. Bruno didn't have that over Lewis, of course, but the difference in reach wasn't that great, only 2 inches. Arm length, we don't know. But Bruno's jab was certainly well timed. Another fight where Lennox Lewis had issues with somebody's jab was against Ray Mercer. And in this instance, Lewis actually had a 7-inch reach advantage. And yet Mercer's jab was landing with regularity and busting Lewis's face up. And I don't think that Mercer's arm length was anywhere near what Lewis's was either. His jab was just well timed. It was a fast jab. It was very solid. He was consistent with it. And also, this is something that Lewis complained about after the fight. They fought in a very small ring for heavyweights. Lewis saw it as a bit of a setup in that regard. Bear in mind, he was the British fighter. Mercer was the American fighter, fighting in New York when Mercer was based in New Jersey, just over the river. Nevertheless, that is an example of a much shorter fighter in this case, with a shorter reach and I have to imagine much shorter arms, having loads of success with his jab against the guy who had one of the better jabs in heavyweight history. Another example I could give, although I don't have the BoxRec up here to show it, is when Mike Tyson fought Tony Tucker. Tony Tucker was 6'5", Mike Tyson is 5'10". I know he was listed at 5'11 and a half for much of his career, but that was an inflated height. Towards the end of his career, and I'm talking about the very end, Mike Tyson's real height came out and he's 5'10". Yet he was able to out-jab the 6'5" Tony Tucker. Mike Tyson's reach, I think, is something like 71 or 72 inches. Tony Tucker's reach was over 80 inches. And just looking at the two guys in the ring, you could tell that the arm length, well, it wasn't even close. Tucker had massively longer arms, yet he got out-jabbed. Now, that was not typical for Mike Tyson, by the way. Normally, against much taller fighters, he was the one getting out-jabbed. But against Tony Tucker, it was the reverse. So going back to Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, 4-inch reach advantage for AJ. I wouldn't be surprised if the difference in arm length is quite small. And that's just from watching their respective fights. Dubois' arms, to my eye, look quite long for his height. Not crazy long, but quite long. Whereas AJ's arms for his height look more in proportion. Now, I've never been in a ring with Daniel Dubois, never taken him on the pads, but based on watching him over the years, I can believe that he's got a more powerful jab than Anthony Joshua. Unlike Lennox Lewis, AJ isn't really known for having an exceptional jab. He's got a decent jab, but it's not Larry Holmes. It's not even Vladimir Klitschko or Lennox Lewis or George Foreman or Sonny Liston. And will that be his downfall in the fight? That's a question, not a statement. Some people believe it will be. As I said earlier on in the video, they think that Dubois is going to ruin AJ with the jab based on what they saw Hellenius do to him. They think he's going to soften him up with a jab, slow him down with body shots, and then knock him out with big head shots. And it could happen. I'm certainly not dismissing it as a possibility. But in AJ's last fight against Francis Ngannou, if we just get the box rec for that contest up here, if we have a look, Ngannou listed at 6'4", AJ 6'6". I think that's about right. Ngannou's reach not listed here, but if memory serves me right, it was listed on the broadcast, and also I think it was listed on the broadcast for the Tyson Fury fight. You guys will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think his reach is actually longer than AJ's. And looking at the two of them in the ring, Ngannou to me appeared to have the longer arms. Now, I'm not saying that Ngannou's timing, with his jab at least, is as good as Daniel Dubois, because I don't think it is. And he's certainly not as well-schooled all round, because he's an MMA fighter, not a boxer. Nevertheless, he still had long arms and a long left hook that AJ had to contend with. And so what AJ did was he used footwork to stay out of range of Ngannou's longer arms. Because while Ngannou had the reach advantage, he didn't have the coordination or the speed advantage. And so as I say, AJ just stayed outside the range, was using lots of feints, and he was trying to get Ngannou to lunge in so he could catch him with counters. Now, of course, Ngannou gave him an open invitation, turning southpaw in the first round. AJ was able to lead off and score a knockdown there, but in the second round, Ngannou was punished with a counter. It was a right hand over Ngannou's long jab. And I suspect that AJ will try to use very similar tactics against Daniel Dubois. But I have to figure that Dubois' arms are not as long as Ngannou's arms. His timing is better, yes, and he's an actual real boxer. Nevertheless, I think AJ's tactics will be very similar. Just float around on the edge of range, get Dubois to commit, lunge in with something, and counter him. Another thing that I think should be appreciated is the fact that in the clinches against Ngannou, AJ appeared to be holding his own in terms of physical strength, and he was outweighed against Ngannou, right? Again, if we have a look at the box rec here, AJ was 252 pounds against Ngannou. Ngannou was 272. So he was 20 pounds heavier than AJ, and that was mostly muscle. Yet AJ in the clinches, to my eye at least, was holding his own in terms of strength. Is Dubois stronger than Francis Ngannou? I doubt it, personally. So there's the possibility here then that at least when AJ's fresh, he may be the physically stronger man up close. I might be able to walk Daniel Dubois back, wrap him up when necessary. If he's able to take Dubois' jab away from him, the way he took Ngannou's left hook away from him, then I suspect AJ's going to win the fight. I think Dubois is one of these guys who gets psychological comfort from landing his jab. He relies on it. And if he can't get his jab going, I think that's when he starts to break down psychologically, if he's getting hit back as well, of course. Because that's what we saw against Joe Joyce and Usyk. He wasn't landing his jab against either of those guys. And I think when that happens, the anxiety levels start to build up for Daniel Dubois. Some fighters are like that, when they rely on a particular punch so much. Not that Dubois only got a jab, he's got very strong right hand, a strong left hook. But as I say, he doesn't rely on those punches as much as he relies on his jab to control things, to keep things nice and steady for him. AJ, in that sense, is a bit more of a versatile fighter because he doesn't really rely on his jab that heavily. He's more of a jack of all trades. His jab may not be as powerful as Dubois' jab, but it's still decent. And I'd say he's got faster power punches, a faster right hand, faster left hook, faster, crisper uppercuts. I think he moves a bit better than Dubois around the ring. And so I think he's got a few more options. And when you combine that with his superior experience, as well as his punching power, that's why I'm picking Anthony Joshua to win this fight. Now, I could be wrong, of course. This is heavyweight boxing, folks. Stuff happens. At the end of the day, a prediction is just a guess. An educated guess, perhaps, but a guess nonetheless. And so my educated guess is AJ successfully nullifies Dubois' jab, lands big counters on him to calm him down and tame his aggression, chips away, breaks Dubois down gradually, psychologically and physically, and then takes him out somewhere around the 8th or the 9th round. If you disagree, if you've got a completely different assessment and you think Dubois is going to smash AJ to pieces, no problem. I'm not saying that's inconceivable. That's one of the reasons I like this fight, because it's dangerous for both men as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, let me know what you think about Daniel Dubois' jab here. Will it lead him to victory, or will AJ be able to overcome it? And if you want to see me go more in depth about the technical aspects of this fight and analyze some actual fight footage, then check out this video I uploaded to my Patreon page. It's a film study of AJ and Dubois. It's over an hour long. I analyze footage from several of their fights, point out strengths and weaknesses and habits, traits, and technical differences. If you want to access this video along with hundreds of hours worth of other exclusive boxing content, as well as our members chat, just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called the Boxing Brotherhood. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just download the app from the Play Store or the App Store. All the links are in the description box below.